when I went into a school, and this particular school, one form entry, and this group of children, basically, their teacher left at the start of the year on stress. So remember, we're in November, right? Their teacher leaves on stress. They've had 7 different teachers between September and November. I went in this week being the 8th teacher. And as I was in this school...
next week, they get the 9th.
Yeah, they get the 9th. They get the 9th next week. Oh, we should laugh. But basically, one of the things that was bugging me, because there's a lot of children from our community in the classroom, but when I was watching the behaviour and the way that they were talking and whatnot, it was as though there was just so much missing in terms of their training. And it gets to the point where you can't be upset with the children because they're just exhibiting... Yeah. You know, I mean, they're working with what they've been given.
It's the fruit of the tree.
It's the fruit of the tree, but it's like what was playing in my mind is what exactly is it that's missing? That's actually creating these situations where we've got young. Because when I was looking at how they talk to each other, how they deal, it's just how they conduct themselves in terms of even self-control. You know, like if you feel something, you're just shouting out, and I feel like it's the small things that we leave that grow into bigger problems later. So if you don't have self-control in a small space where you can go, you know what, I'm not really feeling this, but I can control my...
I was laughing to myself. I'm going to go like, what you call it, devil's advocate here with it. Because recently I've been speaking with this elder, and he's telling me about his past, and there's a few of them I'm speaking to, and I'm like... you have some rose image of how elders are. Yeah. And just after that, we started getting corrupt after. And then he tell me about his life here, and I'm like, oi. Yeah. I'm thinking, all them women that you mess with, they had children.
Yes.
Who couldn't have been happy.
Okay. Now you got to give us a bit more gravitas.
I'm trying to not talk it. Okay. This man was a player and a crazy one. Terrible one. And the stuff he's happy talk, I'm like, don't talk no more. You got to stop. I don't need to hear no more.
And you know that's gone out.
That's gone. I'm doing the maths now. I'm like, ooh, you got to.
So then, what are you thinking in terms of down the line?
So I'm looking at what I'm perceived that terrible white people. What they done to us? No, okay, with the stuff that we had. That we ain't dealt with. And also I've joked with that, but there's many sisters who I know my age or younger, they talk about their past with their family that traumatized them. That they're suffering from now.
Is that not, I'm just going to go back to, what's my sister that wrote the ISIS papers?
Frances Cress.
Frances Cress. Because she said, like, when something pops up and you see stuff in the community, you have to kind of like, particularly with a lot of our negative, not all of it, but a lot of it, you have to take it back to, we've come out of 400 years of slavery, and this is the effects of. So I get that, and I don't. As brother said, you can't blame the children because they're the fruit of the tree. But if you go all the way back to the root, you know, we've gone through something that's made this a reality for us. But your question in terms of like. I'm kind of buying out your bit. I just want to say one word. Parental responsibility. At some point, somebody's got to take it. Regardless of what's happened, somebody's got to go, I draw the line in the sand here, and I'm on my way.
And it's the point, the conclusion I was going to get, not so much in a blame point, but it's just that process. We've got to something that's being manifest now with the children. The children actually are born for something different. They're born from people dissatisfied.
Yes.
So they're meant to give something different, but we're taking them into schools. I used to teach a lot in schools. I don't want to be in the school no more.
Join the club.
So I don't want to be there. So we send our children there. I've seen what they call teachers now in certain. I'm like, boy, I can't be around that. But we're putting our children in there. I wonder why their head going loopy.
I thought it was amazing when he said that the teacher left with stress, and that's a big thing. Like, I'm a teacher. I teach. I've been in the classroom teaching. Stress is the last thing.
Because
the children might be stressed if they don't perform. But how am I gonna be stressed? All I've got to do here is get the best out of you. Like, I'm stressed. Yeah, it's your work, Richard. Like, you got your work to do. Why am I stressed? But they're in there because of what's been given to them is they've got no way to actually engage these children in any positive means where you can get that whole, I'm a teacher, I'm sharing with you, your child, you're learning and sharing with me.
Respect,
We've got that level of respect and communication.
I think respect is the key. And that's what's missing, essentially.
Because, I think it's the foundation of the communication.
Also, we forgot what it's like being in the classroom. You tell the child to sit there in front of someone who's boring. For hours, you meant to sit there bored, stiff. It's a killer, blow. It's like... And then you wonder why, when your child comes home, you ask them what they learned at school. It turns your brain mush. Yes. And we can have children to get used to being bored. Yes. Sit and don't question. You question. Be quiet. Okay.
Oh, wow. Iola, were your teachers boring?
No.
Because I saw that in her face. I saw it. Her face went boring.
The funny thing is, I always ask my sister, she's 15, and I ask her all the time when I see her, how's school? And she'll say, boring. Yeah. Boring. And, now it's just a thing, like, we both say it together, boring. And I'm like, essentially, school's not meant to be fun. You're meant to learn. However, I know when she's there, she has fun, when she's with her peers.
Break time.
Yeah, in break time, possibly. But, again, it's the value of learning. That should be something that you should want to do. It should be something that should be fun. You know what I mean? So I think that, you talked about you not being stressed, but I mean, I don't think I could do it. And then there has to be a lot of respect for you guys and as teachers, because you've got these hormones and these...
You've got to command respect, though.
Mm. Yeah, but it has to be mutual as well.
You have teachers today who in their social lives do not respect themselves. They bring this level of play to the classroom. That's right. If you spend your money and you go to a comedy club, you are entitled to heckle the comedian if you don't feel engaged or entertained. Jeez. Now, I know I had a different experience in education from Iola, in that there were subjects that I loved, that I came to almost despise, based on the teacher in front of me. Yes. And to digress very quickly from the teaching, because there was a point that I missed, I wanted to come in on about the culture. Here, we talk about gangs. Look, before we arrived, there were Teddy Boys and Rockers, and those were the original post-Cold Wars, and we inherited working class European values. Let's not pretend. We didn't come and say we're going to sit next to conservatives and we're going to be up here and we're going to do this. We adopted working class white values, and we mastered them and we put them on steroids. So now we've come to the point where those working class white principals, because they would call their friends, "Oi, you banker." Now, if you're calling your friend a banker and that is your friend, we have now just taken it with our colloquialisms and we are applying those to our so-called friends. But the interpretation of friend for us as men is people who can rely on each other. You call this guy your friend because you know his last name and you've known him for a few years in school. Yes. That's not your friend. You just know this guy. So coming back to teachers now, the value of this person who calls themselves teacher, who may not love to learn, who may become inebriated in the evenings and over weekends and conduct themselves as a child, is now looking to command respect in the classroom. You do not command respect. You do not have the talent to engage me as a human being with my mind. So why would I respect you? And why would I pretend to be engaged? I will create alternative entertainment for myself.
And that's what we see. Do you know what? I think it's if we break that down just a little bit and we think about it in two different ways, because the school system, I mean, if you study just a little bit, you know that the school system, the purpose of it is not, it's not in our benefit. The purpose of it is to duplicate the status quo. That's this we know, and make employees. That's the purpose of the school system. So I understand that from that sense, but then at the same time, I remember coming up in school. I think it's like there's still something that we haven't quite tapped into yet in terms of that personal responsibility. Because I remember coming up, I was blessed, to be honest. I think we're going to get into talking about it a little bit later. I was blessed to actually grow up in an independent school, and went to the Nation of Islam school. This brother was one of my teachers. Like, I was blessed to come up in such an environment where there was a standard of conduct where I knew when I go into this classroom, whether I was feeling like doing English or maths, right? This is what we're doing. Absolutely. And the stability and knowing, okay, this is what you had to do, then I could enjoy things based on that, because I'm actually, all right, I'm engaged because this is what we're supposed to do, and then in that I could actually find enjoyment. Oh, I like this, I like that, but I was in an environment where I was able to be
Parameters was set.
There was this is what I'm trying to get to. There were parameters which allowed me to be focused and engaged. A lot of the time when we're talking about engagement, it's like you go into a zoo and it's like engage, but they're all doing different things. How do I engage? So I think
Piece of live meat generally does it.
well, the teacher's the live meat. That's it.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to get to, so not to disregard what you're saying, but what I wanted to get to was in terms of us as individuals, as parents, as concerned community members, what is it that we need to be doing with our young people to help them develop the kind of skills that they need in terms of not so much just school, but just as in life? In terms of conflict resolution, in terms of just being able to relate to each other as brothers and sisters, we don't have to have, all of these kind of issues that we're seeing in terms of violent crime, people talking about they can't walk the streets at night, mothers worried about their sons going. How do we actually get a situation where our young people have the, I don't know if it's the moral fibre, but you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
Those
look, I'm
qualities.
going to start, because you've asked it, but you've already answered it.
it.
Yeah, because it's that parental responsibility, because once you get that baby from the hospital and you come home, like that's you and this baby. It's up to you where you put them. What's happened is, in the same way that no one wants to take responsibility again. Everybody's palming off responsibility.
Absolutely.
So when these children are the fruit of when everybody palms off responsibility.
Yes.
So when I've got into these situations and I'm seeing them, I'm like, so your parents let you wear that hair? Okay. So your
I'm telling
parents
you,
allow you that level of conversation? Like that's... Somebody's allowed you to think that this is normal behavior. Now, I know from my upbringing, like obviously yours is... I gave you yours, but the upbringing I had was a little bit like yours, in as much as I was allowed out when I'm told I'm allowed out. It's not like a right. Did you? Okay, I've learned my 12 times table at 5 years old, and I'm proficient. You can go outside, son. Out you go. But people don't just knock the house. And they used to go like what they used to say back in the day. You coming out to play? No, my brother's here. He's laughing. No, no, you're not coming out to play, because my parents have parental responsibility where they're saying, I really don't business what's taking place in the rest of the world. This is what happens here. And if you like to eat, if you want bread, cheese, salt, butter, milk, these kind of things, you will behave accordingly. And like you said, after the parameters are set, then you work out, and this is what children will do if you give them parameters, you work out how to exist and how to have your fun and work it out. Because we had a good time, we had a fun time growing up, but you do it within the parameters, otherwise you learn other things. Yeah.
And this is it. This is I think maybe we can get into a bit more depth in terms of how we can actually go, but like exactly how, because I think what's happened is I think a lot of parents have been, they aren't really, what's the opposite of empowered? I'm looking for that word.
Disenfranchised.
Disempowered.
Disempowered, right, there we go. Brain freeze. So disempowered, right, to kind of feel like they can't tell their children anything. I see 6 and 7 year old children coming into school, they're capped backwards. I'm thinking, you're in the classroom, you're capped backwards. Like, okay, and then they're going to say he's got low attention span, he's not doing well in math. Like, he didn't come into the classroom with the right mindset.
And parents are waiting on you as the teacher to fix that.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like you were saying before, that parents will come to you and go, oh, can you tell him to go bed at night? Can you tell him not to watch the TV? Can you tell him...
And this is not just our community, it's Polish parents.
Because it's what brother said. It's like what you were saying before. We might start the trend. So that downward spiral that has come up, like we might start that, but that's across the board now. You can't even call that a black and white issue right now.
It's also on that point, in going back to that school environment, being in a school environment, and you're seeing situations, and you can see what's needed. But then school policy says you can't do that.
Yes.
So, okay, school policy. But you can see that something needs to get done, but policy says you can't do it.
That's stress.
So then you're observing something that you can't address. That's soul destroying.
And then the children, they know their rights as well. It's like they know what the state can intervene.
Yeah,
all these things. They're like, oh, I'm going to call child line and all this foolishness.
And in not being able to
It
address.
doesn't work like that in reality.
Not for my Jamaican household or my Caribbean background. No,
You're very
They're still
being.
confused.
Your power, your strength is you having standards. When you don't do it, you're literally like kryptonite.
Yeah.
You like get weaker. And then the child does something else, and you let it get weaker, and then you can't even speak. You can't say nothing after. You lost all your strength because your strength is in the standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, go on the other extreme. We're not saying certain people now go, but that's the motivation for that is your frustration.
Yes.
The motivation is your ego as being you say you got to do this. The child says no, and you're upset not because they done wrong, but because they didn't agree with you. That's now more ego thing coming in
It's
there.
just that they didn't. Sorry, Dean, I'm going to let you come straight back. But do you think it's that they didn't agree, or because you're making manifest my lack of parental skills and ability?
That merging. It's be able to distinguish now,
Because you didn't actually train this child.
Yes.
You've asked them to do something. They said no and gave you the same colloquial answer they've heard you give 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And now you're vexed because you feel shame that that's come back. 'Cause I
It's
see people do that all the time in my presence
It's that.
and go, oh, I don't know why he said it. I do. I know clean where you're going from. Sorry.
It's also, sorry, I'm making that point. It's that, but also when those children get to a certain age, like 13, 14, and start the testosterone and start growing up big, we get scared of them. So we got to come to terms with our own fear. Because sometimes our decision making is based on our fear of them.
Yes.
We want to oppress them. Oh, you got to listen to me because you're scared of them.
That over-projection
That's
is
it.
all fear.
Exactly.
And that's what the teachers do. They over-project. They talk to the children like they're inmates in a jail.
Yes.
I used to see it when I did emotional literacy in Gladesmore. There were certain teachers, and especially European men and women, and they do that thing, the overbearing thing. Because to be fair with children, there's no such thing as a river without banks. It's called a flood. It's no good for me, it's no good for you.
Yeah.
But the over-projection came from fear. And there was a thing where we would set the session, we would move the desks. I say, that's why I call on this term, big man. Big man, do me a favor. Can you grab the desk? You as well. If you grab that, and can we just move them back around? Nobody had any objection to me speaking to them like a reasonable human being.
Come on.
So now, when you talk about policy of the school, I don't care if you drop a plate in my kitchen and you give me 38 reasons. I'm going to look at you at a stage and say, well on. I'm still looking at the broken plate. At what point are you going to pick up a dustpan and brush and rectify this situation?
Yep, common sense.
So when I was here with Kay Johnston, and we've had many conversations offline about formalizing exactly what she had put together and gone through that war for.
From Diamond Excellence.
Diamond Enterprise School. That is now a teaching system. You come online, this is Windows 7, and all of the other teachers that come on board are now informing this process to create Windows 8 to bring this to market for our young people. Because we can't have glass on the floor. Somebody's going to get cut. We've got to sweep it up. And there's a point.
People are being cut.
People are being cut. There is a point where we've got to start validating ourselves. I stood in Parliament, forget Europeans. They're not here for us. We're now acknowledging this. It's not a problem. You can look. They froze. Like, when you're there in the foreign and the roaches, you turn on the light. They stop. It's okay now. We're past embarrassment because our children are killing themselves.
Yes.
So because we've realised this, we need to now take education from them because we know this is indoctrination. We cannot pretend as adults that we're 6 years old anymore. Stop. Do a skills audit. Let's pull all the teachers behind us to support us who are African Caribbean. Now they're going to endorse an alternative authority to the Department of Education. And you crack on with yours, and we crack on with ours.
And I think it's that drastic kind, and it's not really that drastic, but it just seems drastic. That kind
draw
of
the line in the
Wasn't
sand.
that drastic when you were small?
This
That's
is
just
my
got with the
point.
families
This
that we
is the
just
thing,
got
it's not-
together.
example of it.
Yeah, that kind of action, I think, is that level of action that's actually needed to bring about change. Because otherwise, it seems like it's just like putting they say you put a plaster on a broken leg. It's like because this has been going on for quite some time, if we're honest. We've been hearing about it for quite some time. It's like, we got to do something different if we're going to change.
Which I guess is why we have our guests with us today.
Well, this is it.
To discuss some of this. But like, to me, it's a mindset thing, because once that mindset's changed, and David was the director of education when we had our school at the time, but it's like, it just takes a change of mind. And sometimes even with the qualified personnel, the real qualification is that you have some respect, that you actually care about the end result, because a lot of this qualification thing is just someone else validating you, which is why when I go to talk to someone about homeschooling, I find I'm spending most of my time trying to tell a parent, look, SATs, GCSEs and whatnot, and not your first point of call. You didn't get up, you don't take that child back from the hospital and go, one day I'm gonna get you some GCSEs. It's not relevant. When you're looking at a child's life, that's not the first thing that pops up. But then we've been conditioned a certain way where we're not even able to just have our own qualifications, because somebody thought up those qualifications. Somebody spent time, and I've studied this somewhat, but the way that Caucasian people got together to build their education system for their purpose, again, to be commended. Why don't we just do the same and come up with one for ourselves? So we're going to get ready for the ad break in 5 minutes. But before we do that, over to the solution room, folks. So what y'all going to do for us?
Well, going across the areas of economics, education, I'm going to start with education.
Yes.
Because we're there. We've started a skills audit of teachers, which is more than just to ascertain who are there and what they do. It's to collect a database of support. Because when you've got an overwhelming number of us in the teaching profession who just say, we're going to step off the Titanic onto the lifeboat now, then you have the authority. It's a go. And you go. Now, do your worst. Do what thou willst. That is it. You have already started to formulate your own curriculum. You are now raising funds to purchase buildings, to convert into schools, and then it's a mass migration. Who do you bring on side first? Parents or teachers? Teachers. Because teachers are going to tell the parents, this is okay. These are our children, and we're taking our house back. If you cannot manage your house, put them in an environment where they see fellow Africans as an authority, and then they're going to take that home. What you're going to see when culture comes from the top is a psychological shift and the spiritual shift that goes with that. They're going to the paradigm will change en masse, because now you've given certain guidelines to African Caribbean teachers to say this is all right to be how we are in public. Now we are an authority.
Stop. It's okay to be how we are in public.
Yes.
Now, why would you need to say it's okay to be how we are in public?
Because we accept our authority from Europeans. We got that Pinocchio syndrome. And we're still looking, ultimately, am I a real boy?
I look to them for that validation constantly. It's like, we need to be proud of who we are. And we do things differently. We are the trendsetters, but sometimes we sort of default to this kind of, subordinate kind of position. So we need to go back to empowering ourselves.
It's for fear of offending other people.
Yes,
because
exactly.
It's
Have you seen that panda ad? That panda
I love that picture. I love that picture. Is it a panda or a bear?
It's a meme or
it's
a bear
meme,
or something.
and it's like black people after work, and they've got the black bear, but he's taken off. He's in white, but he takes off his little mask. He's black underneath, and you know what? That is a very real thing. That's a very real thing in the workplace, and it's like it gets to a point.
In the workplace, we've been doing that for 100 years.
Yeah, it's true.
In the workplace. No, you think we was in the barn like we was on the field?
No, it's the black experience, and it's like, when you wear that mask, sometimes you keep a mask on too long, start to tighten, and it's the harder it is to pull off. I feel like we're in that space.
Now we're carrying the mask home. Yeah, okay, cool. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah.
Public.
So there's some excellent synergies that we came across when me and Kay were speaking offline. And when you have an ethos that you are going to train children in all areas to be functional. Remember, when you were keeping the status quo, you got to keep people at a certain level down here, which means there's esoteric knowledge that is to be hidden from them. When you now say you want people to work at the highest echelons of society, you're going to truly educate them. So you want them to have financial literacy, emotional literacy, and all of these things. So starting with financial literacy, if you've got a financial institution, a credit union, and you have children's accounts, and we're all African Caribbean and we're creating those ecosystems, if it's a Diamond Enterprise school, why wouldn't we call the children's accounts Diamond Enterprise accounts? And then the credit union will go and sponsor financial literacy sessions, let's say 4 sessions, send home the letters to parents. Now the parents sign off, they come to the credit union and open accounts for the children. So what they've learned in their class is now practical and tangible.
Yes.
And is real. And they're engaging. They've understood how to open accounts. They get these cards like the Go cards, but they're our cards. And now they're engaging with finances.
You know the piece that, I don't know, and David, you talk to me about this sometimes off the air when we're just talking, but we talked about finance and we talked about education.
Yes.
One of the things that is really big, and as members of the Nation of Islam, I guess it happens for us a lot, because self-development we're given as the basis for community development, and we have a standard of behaviour that we have to... See, when there's no morals and character, and we start talking large sums of money, credit unions and banks, the sharks start to swim in the water. So, I mean, it's like when we've spoken... And I said to you, like this, I know this program what you were speaking of because I've heard it spoken of in different spaces, and I love it. And whatever you guys need, we're here to help. How are we going to deal with the moral issues?
The rights of
Because I'm a little bit worried about. I mean, like the old folks. I'm a little bit worried about the old folks.
Yeah.
And the characters and morals, because when you're dealing with children, and I hope David gets to speak freely on this after, he might not want to. I might be calling him out. But you as Director of Education, it was not a walk in the park running a school with us, was it? An ad break's coming, so don't try it. Just now. We're going to be back. Trev, in fact, Trevon's hosting the show. I have prepared my replacement.
Right. So I tell you what, I think we've got 2 minutes. That's what the time is telling me.
That's it. Oh, it's his first time. Ad breaks, people.
You know what? So there's 2 timers.
You trained him well.
I love that. That's the baton, the legacy right there.
Which one was
You
it?
prepared your retirement. God.
Amiga Radio, 104.1 FM. News and views around your community.